everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to the first time in Aggieville Alleycats history for several things. Firstly, it is the first time that we have had a guest for 3 consecutive episodes, if you are counting Night in the Ville, which was one of the most fun episodes that we've ever recorded because we started with random rants about numbers among several other different things. But it's also the first time that, weirdly enough, the first time that we have had the founder of Bosco's Boys and probably the first person of relative importance to discover that we existed after episode 5. And it is, of course, the founder of Bosco's Boys and one of the most prolific voices in the K-State podcasting game. Unfortunately, it's not Grant, it's Scottwildcat. But
I don't, I love Grant, but and I love you guys, but I bet he's never listened to an episode of you guys. So
no, he listened to the Nevada episode because he gave us props on that episode. He's like, yeah, we've never done work like that in the history of the show. Well,
he should speak for himself. So I'll say that because I work very hard, but you guys really do. You guys take it to another level, and you guys do break down X's and O's, and you guys do a great job. And I've only been fishing for this invite going on 3 years now, so I'm glad I finally was able to twist your guys' arm enough to bring me on. So thank you for bringing me on.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you on. It's just something that I guess kept getting kicked down the line for no discernible reason.
No, honestly. You guys just pretend to like me because I'll talk about you and retweet and occasionally send you guys t-shirts. So I understand. It's okay. It's kind of like in my own household. My parents just put up with me. I'm not the favorite. There's only one living thing in the world that truly loves me. It's my dog Chauncey. And he's even a little mad at me because I'm not paying attention to him right now. So it's something I've come to live with and I just accept.
He's figured us out. He's figured it all out. But before we get into talking about just the vibes for the football, men's basketball, and of course the volleyball season, since Scottwildcat is one of the biggest Volleycat supporters out there, we do want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the show, and that is Greg Arthur. If you wish to be read out at the beginning of every single episode, as well as supporting the show financially, please be sure to check out the official supporters link found in our podcast and Twitter bios. But let's start with the big sport, very similarly to what we've done pretty much in this entire string of episodes, and that is starting off with the football season. We've talked at length, well, not really at length because our preview episode isn't up yet. Still have no idea when we're recording that, but we've talked about with both Chef and all the friends on Nights in the Ville how we're sort of feeling about the upcoming football season. So I guess with all the work that you do with getting additional schools on to give the summer school series, how are you feeling about the season as it stands as we record on June 30th in the year of our Lord 2024?
Oh, just kind of unmuting myself there. First off, shout out to our Lord. Shout out. Second, I think, and this is where talking to other podcasts, and I'm about halfway through the season. I recorded a little bit ahead, so I'm all the way through the West Virginia game on our schedule. I've found talking to everyone, whether it be Tulane, whether it UT Martin, Arizona, everyone at this point, in June, folks will be listening to this in July. Everyone has confidence. Everyone's thinking, hey, when you look at the schedule, I can find 8, 9, 10 wins here. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of. And I think that's the fun part about A, being a fan, and B, following a sport such as college football. I think it's the greatest sport in the world. And it's for so many different reasons. And I'm scared college football is losing that romance as they continue to try to act like the NFL. But when you talk about what I expect, what I hope for this season, I see no reason why K-State cannot be contending and ultimately end up in Arlington. I think so much, and you guys have said it. Derek Young has said it, even though he then went on to predict, I believe, K-State either winning the conference or getting to Arlington himself. And it's a very smart thing. Hey, this might not be the year. It might be 2025. I totally understand that line of thinking. But when you look at the schedule, and once games start getting played, strength of schedule goes out the window. You don't know. Like, for all we know, Arizona and Oklahoma State and KU, they could all be crap. And all the teams that we miss, they could turn out to, be elite or vice versa. But when you look at the schedule right now, I have a hard time just throwing our hands up and say, you know what? If we go 8-4, that's fine. If we go 9-3 and 6-3 in the Big 12, we'll go get them next year. Because I look at, you're going to have to go on the road to Utah next year, and because the NCAA doesn't have a spine, Cam Rising can come back for a 12th season, by the way. You're going to have to play a road game versus KU. And, of course, guess what? Jalen Daniels still has eligibility left. You still might have Colorado on this, all this type of stuff. The schedule looks a lot tougher next year. On the road at Oklahoma State, I believe. So, again, I think you need to maximize years in the Big 12 where the schedule, at least on paper, looks like it's going to help you. And that's where I'm at. I'm saying, hey, look, I understand all the reasons why people might be cautious. I understand all the reasons why you might say, maybe we're better set up for next year. But I just can't accept that. I don't know if it's Arlington or bust, but it's 9-3 or bust. It is, hey, you need to be playing for it when you're going up to Ames, Iowa in that final week for this to be a successful season. I know that's a high bar, but I think that's where K-State football is under Chris Kleiman. I really think that is where the program is, with or without Oklahoma and Texas. When you have this schedule, I really think that's where they need to be.
Yeah, and I think I generally agree, even though I still think that next year might be the year where everything comes together and is really elite. I don't think that doesn't mean that this year can't be a Arlington or narrowly missing Arlington type of season, because at least, again, you said it well, everybody at this point in the season, or at this point in the off season, that is, thinks that, hey, we're really improved. We're going to really make a run this year. And so I mean, this is the best time of year for every single college football fan base. And but right now, I mean, we have a lot of pieces, and the schedule is definitely appetizing. So I think we should probably win 10 games this year, and 9, I'm going to be like, yeah, that's fine. But I mean, 8-4, I think, would be a disappointment this upcoming year, which I hate, saying stuff like that, because at risk of sounding like a jaded, spoiled sports fan, but at the same time, want to have expectations. And I think this team deserves expectations, because this team has got the talent to really go down as some of the all-timers. And the comparison I've made with this team is this could be like the 2011 to 2012 or the 97 to 98 type of team, where, just because next year is the year that gets remembered, that doesn't mean that this year's team is going to be, just average. This can still be a really good team that finishes top 3 in the Big 12.
Well, and let me say something, because I liked what you said. Hey, I don't want to act like a spoiled, jaded fan at 8-4. I think it is important for K-State fans to remember you can be disappointed in 8-4, and I don't think that makes you spoiled. I don't think that makes you jaded. I don't think that is holding the team up to a unfair standard. Now, if you're sitting here trying to fire Chris Kleiman, if he goes 8-4 and then he's in, the Texas Bowl next year, like, okay, chill out, chill the F out. If you're trying to fire Chris Kleiman, if you're trying to say, oh, we need to move on from XYZ because you go 8-4, that's fine. But I don't think it is, I don't think it's unreasonable to say you're disappointed and, hey, that might've been a failure of a season. And we'll talk about basketball here in a second, but I don't think it's unfair to say last year was a failure of a basketball season because we got to the NIT and we were right there on the bubble. I think that says a lot about what Chris Kleiman and football and Jerome Tang has done to expectations and the caliber that we're at. Again, we're not saying fire either of those guys. We're not Nebraska football that's been in an eternal damnation ever since they fired Frank Solich. That's not what I'm advocating for at all. But what I am advocating for is folks to maybe shed the, okay, we're just K-State, looking around the corner for, the boogeyman to jump out and embrace the situation, embrace the era that we're in, because eventually Chris Kleiman's going to retire. And we don't know if Gene Taylor's still going to be the AD and if we're going to nail that hire. So I think K-State fans need to embrace the expectation and embrace the level of football we're playing in, because it may not be here 5 years from now. It may not be here 10 years from now. Who knows? I want to enjoy it and have those expectations while we're here in the moment.
I mean, yeah, half of the fun of being a fan, to blatantly steal from you every second week. Fan is short for fanatic. So like it's the fun of having those expectations. Because remember last year, Texas Tech was considered to be the dark horse. And I'm sorry that the Gambling Gauchos are catching a stray on this show, but they just weren't that. But everyone has that exact same hope going into the season. And it's just a matter of, very few people are going to dive into each of their respective opponents and share the same opinion. Like that's just not the nature of fans. It may be what Connor and I do, and it may be a little bit of what you're doing with the summer school show, but just having that expectation, everyone has it. It's just a matter of how much it's justified. And I think for K-State this year, it is a justified expectation, and it is something that they have to enjoy. For the next couple of years, K-State football at the very minimum, and honestly, each of the sports except for one, which I will still not name live on this show, but everyone knows what it is. But they have a lot to look forward to in these next couple of years, because we get 2 years of Avery Johnson at minimum, you get 2 years of a massively talented backfield that includes names like Dylan Edwards, Devon Rice, and Joe Jackson, as well
JB as Price, baby,
and John Price, Captain Price himself. And it's that expectation and that love. And yeah, you can have those expectations, and you can not constantly be looking over your shoulder. I will say that I hope Kleiman doesn't retire before we get the opportunity to ask the boxers or brief questions and then have to look over our shoulder for a sniper every time we go to the stadium.
I don't know exactly when he's going to retire, but Chris Kleiman has made reference, and he doesn't seem like a guy who's going to coach until he's in his 70s. So I say enjoy the Chris Kleiman era as long as you get him. And I want to give you kudos when you're talking about, future running backs, because you rightfully so pointed out, and again, your latest video, absolute cinema, by the way, DJ Giddens is going to have his name heard in this next NFL draft. I would be shocked if he is on this roster this time next year. I'm selfishly hoping he's a 5th or 6th round pick by the Kansas City Chiefs, because I think running backs need to maximize their time in the NFL. And honestly, and this is not a shot at KU or at Devin Neal or anything, I wish he was a Wildcat. I feel sorry for him. He's wasting a year that he should be going towards his NFL, pension, his NFL earnings, playing at KU. Running backs above any other position need to take their shot at the NFL when they get it. And I hope DJ Giddens has a season that puts him in the record books. I hope he has another 1,000-yard rushing season. I hope he has another 300-400 yards receiving. I hope he gets a handful of touchdowns. Then I hope he's making money and moving towards, generational type of opportunities in the NFL. Because I think he's that type of back, and I think he's that type of person. He deserves that. And I'm not going to be selfish and sit back and say, maybe he'll be here next year. No, I hope he's hearing his name called in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I know it's a bit of a side tangent, but I really couldn't agree with you more on the status of running backs in the NFL. I felt this way for a while. And if your name isn't like Christian McCaffrey, then you really do need to get to the NFL as fast as possible. I love Bijan Robinson as much as the next guy, but 7th overall pick on him is kind of crazy.
We watched that live, and everyone else was celebrating. You and I looked at each other like, "What? Wow, that's something that happened."
Atlanta's draft strategy. Again, we're not going to go on an NFL draft tangent, and again, he will have a good 3-4 years in the NFL. But if your shelf life really doesn't even get you to that, extra year option in the NFL. That's why you don't take running backs that early. But yeah, we don't need to trash Atlanta's drafting strategy and whoever their GM is. So because he's
they've
heard of him when you just signed Kirk Cousins.
Was
that also 7 overall?
Wasn't like 11.
Penix? It was in the low teens, I think.
Yeah,
not
but 7.
Regardless,
come on, man.
My fault. But another sort of topic that we talked about on Nights in the Ville is we went through the entire schedule. We're not going to do that because I don't want this to be an hour and 45 minutes. But sort of going through the schedule, we each had one trouble game that we looked at for one reason or another that was something that sort of gave us pause. So for that game, which game do you think is that game? Whether it be the most underrated opponent or an underrated factor? And then sort of the inverse of that question, which game do you think might be getting overhyped a little bit?
Okay, so game that might scare me a little bit. I think West Virginia last year was very much a product of their schedule. But they have 2 good running backs. They have a mobile quarterback, and that is a long trip. That is a stadium that can get loud. And I think West Virginia really, when you look at their schedule, they're going to be the kingmakers for Arlington. They play basically the entire top half of the conference outside of Utah. So West Virginia, it's not like, oh man, this will be the toughest game they have. They will have a battle-tested schedule. So that's one. And again, if you look at Kelly Ford, that and the Iowa State game, those are the 2 that are the closest when you look at the odds, despite K-State, at least in volume 1 for his projections, being favorite in all of their games. So that's the one that sticks out to me. Again, I know folks want to look at Tulane. And I think Summerall, I think he's going to be a good coach. He is proven that he can win at a high level, but that being the second game, new quarterback, new coaching staff, all that type of stuff, I'm not too worried about that. And honestly, not too worried about Arizona as well, because here's the thing. Those are non-conference games. I obviously want K-State to go 12-0. I don't want K-State to lose any game at all. But I'm of the belief that it's going to be very tough for a Big 12 team to get an at-large bid in the college football playoff. So I'm not worried about that at all. I'm worried about getting to Arlington. So it's not preseason. They have more value than an NFL preseason game, but I can't really be too bothered with any of those. I am a little bit Oklahoma State at home, and I don't know if folks are bringing that up. And I understand they're probably the best team on our schedule, but everyone's tending to look at some of those road games. Ollie Gordon's the real deal. We all remember what happened in Stillwater last year, and we all remember at the same time what happened the last time they came to Manhattan. So I think there's a little bit of, hey, on their end, remember what happened last time. And they have maybe the best player in the conference, at least at a minimum, one of the top 3 or 4 players in the conference on their team. So I'm a little bit worried about that Oklahoma State game. And I think so many folks are looking at West Virginia, Iowa State, Colorado. I think someone on your show even said Houston, and I spit out my coffee. I almost choked. I almost died, right before a meeting, someone talking about Houston. Again, I'm not going to say anything bad about my fellow, former Shawnee native Willie Fritz. I've learned my lesson. Don't say anything bad about Willie Fritz, but no. If that's a game we struggle with, if we were to lose that game, we're not going to have the type of season that we want.
So is there a team that you're looking at that you think would have like an overrated matchup as well?
Kansas, the University of Kansas. And here's the thing. In a hypothetical world where they are healthy and they come into Manhattan, could they be spicy? Yes. I'm not going to say that, they're not talented. But Jalen Daniels, how many? Here's a trivia question for you guys. How many bowl teams has JD6 beat? How many bowl teams?
Did Illinois make a bowl last year?
No.
Then
Illinois
made
a bowl. Right? There's like maybe one, and I think it was Houston the year they were still in the American.
Oh,
I think it was one. I think it was Houston when they were in the American. And I am not saying he's not a good quarterback.
Oh, I am.
I'm not going to do that. I think he's talented, but he hasn't all these, these wins that KU has had. When you think back, like, man, the Lance Leipold era, the one you look at is Texas. They didn't go to a bowl game that year. The year that they beat Texas, they did not go to a bowl game. Granted, they beat Courtney Messingham's K-State Wildcats at offensive coordinator. That was the end of Courtney Messingham. Good night, my sweet prince. That's his signature win. His signature win, or no, I lied. They have two because he also beat Duke the year they went like 8-4. But he's never beat a ranked team. He's beat like two bowl teams. So I think this is being hyped up, and I think it's this fear from K-State fans that they know eventually KU is going to beat us. It's going to happen. We are all going to live, God willing, long enough that KU beats K-State in football. It eventually is going to happen, or college football will be extinct. One of those two things will happen.
I'll take the latter.
I don't know, but it eventually is going to happen. It's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen in Manhattan. It's not going to happen with Avery Johnson. It's not going to happen with this team. I think K-State fans, there's a segment of them that are very scared of that game because when it eventually happens, it's going to suck. It is going to really suck. And as someone who has a tweet that I refuse to delete that gets bumped when KU does go to bowl games, I understand how bad it's going to suck. It's not going to be this year. There should be zero fear from that game. So there's my answer.
That's a good answer. So just going to steal the last few questions from your Blitz month shamelessly. And technically I'm citing my source, so in a legal environment, it's fine. Who are your picks for offensive and defensive breakout before we move into men's basketball?
Okay, so I'm going to, I think the easy answer is Dylan Edwards for breakout. I'm going to try to get a little bit more creative. And I do think it's going to be Kitley on the offensive line. And folks are going to be like, oh, how do you even judge that? This is my judgment for it. And I'm going to say this on your show. I'm going to say this on my show. Although by that point, I get to steal. Because when I answer my own Blitz month, I get a whole month of asking people smarter than me this question. So I might change it by then. But right now, I'm willing to say that Kitley is going to either be a first or second team all-conference offensive lineman, and he's going to be drafted into the NFL. I think he's Cooper Beebe light. I think ideally they would have liked him to be playing guard, but they weren't able to find that tackle that they feel comfortable starting. So I think he's going to be a left tackle. I think he's going to play great. I think he's going to be an all-conference guy. And he's a newcomer, so he's a breakout. If you want to go with a young guy, I don't know if Oakley counts, but I think either Metzger or Ancio, I think one of those young tight ends are going to, Swanson's still around, I believe, and then they brought in that blocking tight end. But one of those other young tight ends behind Oakley is going to have 2 or 3 touchdowns. So, yeah, I gave like 4 answers, so I'm sorry. I know I yell at people on my own show for doing that, but there's a handful of answers.
Yeah, we're lovers, not fighters on this show.
Yeah. And then on defense, this I don't feel confident in this one. This is more me trying to project because he was one of my all-time favorite high school guys. Again, I'm not great at looking at tape like you guys, but when I watch McIntosh, I'm like, this guy eventually is going to be an all Big 12 corner. And I don't know if he's going to be on the 2 deep this year, so I might be a year early with him. But when he eventually gets out there, he has all the skills needed to be an all Big 12 corner. So I'm going with McIntosh on defense.
Yeah. Donnie's a good pick, and he does have that trait that's pretty hard to teach, which is length, speed, and height. Plus, he came in with a pretty advanced knowledge of knowing how to use the sideline. So,
and here's a spoiler alert. I don't know when this is going out. Eventually, K-State, I don't know if he's going to play corner or safety. Eventually, K-State's going to get the 5A 200-meter record holder to commit to be a defensive back. So there's a little bit of breaking news depending on when this gets published.
This was probably going to come out Wednesday.
Okay, they love their long corners. So if it's coming out Wednesday, hey, we got a 5-star. How about that?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, isn't it? But we also don't count eggs before they hatch because nightmare scenario.
No, I'm counting all of them. I got 5-star eggs just waiting in my fridge to make an omelet with.
Well, don't you have like a hard-boiled egg challenge certainly for some of these guys? I mean, with how much you're talking about those.
How many hard-boiled eggs are you eating for Cure?
So none. I'm a million. He's a wildcat. The origin of that, by the way, there was a I think it was a Reddit post that went viral on Twitter of this woman saying like her red flag and the reason why she stopped seeing this guy is he claimed that he could eat an egg for every single age that he was, and I think that's easy. Like, so that's why I even made it tougher because I could eat 32 scrambled eggs in 15 minutes. So that's why I make it harder by saying hard-boiled egg. And that became a joke. And then, of course, it went viral on K-State Online. And I will note, undefeated on declarations, even though I did temporarily try to back out of the Jerome Tang one. But he's a cat. So, but yeah, a million. I'd eat a million hard-boiled eggs. Lincoln Cure is a cat.
Well, now that we've had the show tangent out of the way, we can move into men's basketball. And this is very similar. It's going to start very similarly to how our conversation with Chef started. Last year was, I'm not even going to call it a disappointment. I'm going to call it an abject failure. And is it entirely Jerome Tang's fault that it was an abject failure? Not entirely, no. But I shouldn't get to the point with any season at K-State, not with the hires that Gene Taylor has made. I shouldn't get to the point at the end of any season where I'm like, thank God that's over. And that is exactly where I was at with the men's basketball team this last year. It's basically starting over from zero, with the exception of David Gasson, the future NBA player Tosh Manning, and who else? Buddy Rich. So you're basically starting from zero plus Dave. So, and it's difficult to say that the roster isn't looking better. So what's your general outlook for and expectations for the upcoming year?
First off, Jerome Tang and his staff listen and read just about everything. So, Coach, if you're listening to this, what's up? What's going on? Please come on the show. Either show. I would give up my spot for you to come on Aggieville Alleycats. I know you're not coming on mine, but if you want to come on Aggieville Alleycats, please do. Last season was a failure. I will say this. Any team that loses either their number one or number two player and never gets to play a game, it's going to be tough. Any team that loses two of what their rotational eight is going to be, it's going to be tough. But here's the thing. If a guy with Swiss cheese knees was always going to be in your 8-man rotation, that season was always going to be a little rough. Jerome Tang and his staff does own some of what last year was, but I acknowledge there was a lot of stuff at play that kept them from being in the NCAA tournament. Expectations for next year, look, if they are not in the NCAA tournament, I mean, everything that I thought that this staff could accomplish goes out the window. And I'm maybe not hitting the eject button, but it's like, okay, this flight is not going to take me to the promised land. Maybe it'll take me to Hawaii. I just have a hard time seeing the amount of money NIL wise that was invested in this roster. In what I perceive as some pretty high end talent on this roster. And if you can't get to the NCAA tournament, things are bad. I think you need to have higher expectations. I think you need to talk about finishing top half of the Big 12, which 16 teams, you should be saying, Scott, of course, you're talking NCAA tournament, 8 teams. Well, here's the thing. I think you could go down the list of Big 12 teams and probably say 13, maybe even 14 of these teams could be NCAA tournament teams if they were in a different conference. It's going to be disgusting. It's going to be 10 weeks of absolute hell, 20 straight games of slobber knocker basketball. So, yeah, I need them to finish top 8. I'd love to be talking about seeding and location and not on the bubble. If we're on the bubble, again, I'm going to be having to have hard conversations with myself that I broadcast to thousands of listeners on my podcast where I say, I thought Jerome Tang could get this team to the promised land. I thought Jerome Tang could win a national title. If we're talking bubble in March, I think we have to lower what we think the ceiling under Jerome Tang is. Luckily, I think Jerome Tang maximizes the talent he gets. The entire roster minus Dave is supposed to be there in July. Knock on wood for a chore that he gets there in July and not August. But Hawkins is there. Chor's still working on some stuff, and David's playing for the Netherlands. This is the earliest he's had his team. The summer development actually can be maximized, which I think is a big thing. I think when you look at the Big 12 roster schedule, look, in a perfect world, maybe you're only playing KU and Iowa State once, but you want to play home and away with those guys. But when you look at it, if you were to craft out the perfect 20-game schedule, that's about as close as it gets. It's winnable away only games. You're getting your rivals home and away, and you're getting some big dogs in Arizona and Houston at home only. I think you need to be saying, hey, the bar is 11-9, a winning record at a minimum in the Big 12, because K-State's going to be the butt of almost every joke when you talk about the amount of money they spent on this roster. If they're not in a winning record, if they're not comfortably in the NCAA tournament, that's really the bar I need to see Jerome Tang clear. But again, it's only June. Why not say they have the potential to be top 3? Why not say they have the potential to be a 2 or 3 seed and playing in Wichita for the opening rounds? Who's to say they're not to get to a Final Four? Again, they've given us enough reason for hope and enough reason that bar is high enough. So that's my 5-minute, thoughts on the Basket Cats. That's what I get for drinking a couple Manhattan Brewing Company beers before I come on with you guys.
Hey, no free ads. No free ads.
No free ads, but great beer. That's all I'm going to say. No free ads, but great beer.
The patio and points party out of Raspberry Townie. Really good. No free ads.
There we go. No free ads. I'll ask you guys. You can be as long-winded or short-winded as you want. This is your show. Where is that bar for you guys to clear for the Basket Cats?
I think my minimum bar, at least for me. Before I say that, last night I walked to Cold Stone and saw Dream Dowling there. He was behind me in line with his wife. I was too much of a coward to say hi, though, but I'm saying hi now since apparently he may listen to this.
Dream is the most personable guy in the world, and even if he won't come on my show, he's talked to me courtside, humble brag a couple times. So shout out to Dream, because he probably is listening.
He complimented one of our T-shirts once, and then a retired design, Lost Media.
Well, he's listening, so shout out to Dream.
Shout out Dream. But I'm hoping for, I think my minimum ask is probably top 8. I think my realistic ask is top 6, and that's me I'm trying to temper a little bit just because I know how difficult the Big 12 is going to be again, because I know we have this conversation every single off season, but it really is going to be a meat grinder with the 20-game schedule. Houston's always going to be good. KU's always going to be good. Iowa State's going to be really good too. And then Baylor's Baylor. So there's just so many schools that you can count on to fill in that top 5. So it's not going to be K-State, waltzing in there. It's going to be K-State's going to have to scratch and claw its way to get there. But like you said, Scott, the schedule is a really good opportunity. There's going to be some really high-profile conference games being played in Bramlage. Of course, KU and Iowa State, since they're our rivals. Then, you're hosting Arizona, you're hosting Houston. Those are huge games. So there's going to be multiple chances for K-State to prove itself, to get its net ranking up there, and potentially secure that higher seed. So, and then also, this is the best on paper roster that K-State's had in the Tang era, especially top to bottom. Keontae Johnson, Marquise Snow, those guys were incredible, K-State legends. But this year's team, you look at it and you're you go down the list of transfer commits, you look at who you're bringing in, you hear the whispers about how David Castillo's apparently been that guy. And if David Castillo can give me 5-6 points a game and 10 minutes of competent point guard play, I'm going to be super happy with that for a true freshman in the Big 12. And it sounds like we might be able to count on that by the second half of the season. We'll see. But going out and getting your point guard early with Doug, landing a Chor. I think, of course, Coleman is the big splash. But, you miss on a couple of guys like Cliff and Khalif Battle. But for the most part, this is something that I know Ace has talked about a bit. They mostly got their top or near the top of the board choices, which is not something that we've seen yet for the most part. And that leads me to have a lot of confidence because I do still really believe in this staff. And I think that what like you were alluding to, I think they really can take us far. But yeah, it's just going to be, can we survive the Big 12 and make it to March without being exhausted, basically?
And really, here's the thing. I think that if you get to March, and it's all about getting there, and if you can get there healthy, you kind of throw everything out the window. I mean, we've seen a couple times K-State teams making a run that you don't really anticipate, and we've seen times where it gets cut down in the first game. So I like the idea of this staff in March, and really, if Coleman Hawkins, we brought in like 5 guys who played center for their team. That's an exaggeration, but it's like 3 or 4. And if Coleman Hawkins can play the wing as well as everyone who is telling me I'm dumb for saying he's not, if he can play the wing as well as everyone thinks, dude, imagine trying to prep for that team on a short turnaround in March. It's like, get to March, you win that first game. It's like almost say Sweet 16 at a minimum. So again, bring me on in March and we'll talk about that, but it is exciting and I'm glad I have season tickets. So, might have to take Ace with me a couple times, pick him up in Topeka. So
this really does kind of feel like a team that they went out and said, we need to build a March team. Because if you like we can go down the list. I mean, they went out and got like some sharpshooters with Housen. They got the guy that can be a dynamic March point guard in Doug McDaniel. They have at least a couple guys that are going to be able to throw down lobs with Ugo and Achor. Coleman Hawkins is your X factor there.
And he got a team to the second weekend. He got first weekend Brad Underwood to the second weekend. You know, if anyone can do that, I mean, that's freaking act of God getting Brad Underwood to the second weekend. So, Coleman Hawkins did that.
Yeah, but this is a team that I think they really went out and tried to build for March, and this is even without talking about guys like Max Jones and Buddy Rich and Moby.
No, you don't have to talk about Moby.
We
don't have to do that. We don't have to do that on this show.
No, I want to talk.
I know they're listening, but we don't need to do that on this show.
He's from Ireland, so I think it's written in the stars because K-State's going to be playing in Ireland that he's going to throw down a thunderous March dunk when we're up by like 30 on like a 14 seed. So I think that'll make the one shining moment highlight reel. So come back to me when that happens.
So I don't really have anything to add outside of what Connor said. So I'm just going to lead, I don't know, whichever. Just we can talk about it more afterwards. But the question I have is, the leading scorer will also lead in what other statistic?
Oh, that's good. He's also going to lead in assists because I do think it is going to be Doug McDaniel. I know he said he came in and said, hey, part of the reason why I want to come to the system is so I don't have to be that lead scorer. I can also be a facilitator. I think ultimately he is going to be the guy who scores the most because I look at rest of the team. And again, Coleman Hawkins, I mean, what, second team All Big Ten or maybe honorable? I can't remember. And he played with 2 NBA draft picks. I understand that, but he averaged like 12 points a game. I mean, CJ Jones, he was on a bad team in the Missouri Valley. David Gasson, I mean, he can be a 9, 10, 11-point scorer, but he's not going to lead a team. Achor, he was coming from Samford, and I know they pressed for 40 minutes, but again, he only played 21 minutes a game. So is he going to be able to play 25, 28 minutes a game? Ugo, he wasn't a scorer. So I really think, Housen and Max Jones and Castillo, they should be coming off the bench. I don't think I miss anyone who's going to be like in the top 9. So I think it comes down to Doug McDaniel, and I think it's going to be leading the team in points and assists and minutes. Boom. He's going to average 37 minutes a game as well. There you go. Bonus.
Connor, do you want me to go first or do you want to make your pick?
I I don't really know if there's a better answer than that. I think the next best option would have to be like a chore and like rebounds probably, if I had to guess. Because I mean, like because this could end up being a team where Doug is averaging somewhere around like 15, 16, and then we have like a bevy of guys that are just around double figures, which would be great, I think, if we have a lot of guys that we can just rely on. And, Coleman, that was kind of his role at Illinois last year. He wasn't supposed to be their lead scorer, but he also had a game where he scored 33. So like he's capable of being a scorer, but he's not the scorer. He's just like, if the matchup's right, we're gonna just kind of give him the green light like we did with Kaluma against BYU of all teams, because he just seemed to obliterate BYU and no one else. But
of all teams and of all people.
Yeah, like Tyke Green against TCU.
TCU.
I guess. That's the poll.
Shout out Tyke Green. Shout out.
Pterodactyl. Yeah, the Tyke dactyl there. But my answer would actually probably be Coleman Hawkins with points and field goal percentage, because I think he's probably just going to be really efficient. And I have nothing to back that up. I'm not a basketball guy, but that's just the vibe I get.
I think if Coleman Hawkins is like hits his ceiling with K-State, I think he's going to be almost like Dean Wade in the fact that it's like, shoot more, dude. Like, go for it. You're
Sundell.
Please do
Serena
more.
Sundell.
Yeah, I think if he hits his max, that's the type of player he's going to be.
Yeah, shout out to that Dean Wade game against Iowa State where he figured out he was allowed to shoot. That was for having seen Dean Wade for a couple of years at that point. But I know this is a bit of a side tangent, but I just remember watching that game just like mouth agape the entire time. It's like you've been able to do this the whole time and you haven't been? Like, what's going on, man? But no, I'd love if Coleman Hawkins could be frustrating in that sense.
Yeah. With Dean Wade, and again, it's a tangent. How people remember him is going to be so amazing because despite my campaign for Dean Wade to be in the rafters and not necessarily Barry Brown was the fan favorite. Barry Brown was the heart and soul of that team. Barry Brown was a generation's like favorite player, but Dean Wade was the best player, and Dean Wade was the guy who was first team all conference twice. But because he was hurt for both of those postseason runs when they were there, I think that everything about him just, there's just a cement ceiling on how so many people remember Dean Wade. And I think, 10 years from now, it'll be even more interesting to talk to people who were in school or they were younger recent graduates and talk about, okay, what do you remember about Dean Wade? Do you remember him throwing down on Brady Manick and, setting the tone for the game that clinched the Big 12 at home? Do you remember him gutting out and playing 5 minutes, on a tore up leg versus Kentucky in, the Sweet 16? Or do you remember how he wasn't on the court versus Loyola? He wasn't there for the Big 12 tournament and NCAA tournament after we won the Big 12. What do you remember about Dean Wade? Do you remember him hitting a game winner on the road versus Georgia in a season that really didn't amount to anything? His story is going to get even more intriguing as time moves on.
To me, that sounds like the inverse of the Marquise Noel effect, because I've gone on record multiple times saying Marquise Noel is my favorite K-State basketball player ever. He's probably my second or third favorite K-State Wildcat ever. And it was a conversation for a while. I was like, he was really efficient while he was here. And then March happened and he decided that he was going to turn on cheat codes or lower the difficulty to rookie or something, and just became like the postseason hero. And it really is sort of the opposite of the Dean Wade effect. I think both belong in the rafters, but it's sort of like in that inverse scenario.
No, I'm right there with you. I will give shout out to Zach, aka K-State Man 14. I don't know if he listens to your guys' show or not. He doesn't listen to mine. He doesn't listen to mine, even though he pretends that he does. He rightfully pointed out that his stat line, was on par with some of like the third team All-Americans, his final year with Bruce, when everyone was trying to talk about the type of team Tank could have. And he pointed it out. And then, of course, Noel was a third team All-American the next year. So I'll give him a shout out, even though I don't know if he's listening. He should. Everyone should be listening to this show.
Yeah, Marquise was kind of in Bruce's last year. I kind of remember him being semi-controversial, honestly, like at least among the people I interacted with. Like, now I never disliked him, but I remember there were like I talked to people that did not like how he played at the end of the KU game on the road. They thought they didn't like it was like a body language thing. They thought he was like kind of like giving up or something. And I know there were people that were kind of like doubtful of him going into that season. So I think that also kind of plays into his legend a little bit, is because it feels like he kind of just came out of nowhere and Jerome Tang unlocked something in him, which to a certain degree he sort of did by like really like letting go of the leash once we got to Big 12 play. But at the same time, I think some of it is that last year under Bruce just was really a gut punch in a lot of ways. And so people don't really remember that Marquise was pretty good that season. And he was also kind of overshadowed by Nigel Pack as well. So.
No, I think that's a good call. And I think Marquise, again, I think Jerome Tang was able to turn the key in the elevator and it's like, oh, here's 10 floors that can be unlocked, because he wasn't bad. He was good under Bruce, but I do think in that final Bruce year, Marquise Noel had to take on some of the baggage of everyone being done with Bruce. And then he did, there was controversy on his exit from Arkansas Little Rock or whatever school he was at. So I think he was still carrying on some of that, but I don't think anyone can say Marquise Noel at a minimum isn't a K-State legend. And again, I think there's a lot of people. I think K-State does a horrible job, especially in basketball, when it comes to rafters and recognizing greatness and history. But in my opinion, there is no reason why Marquise Noel should not be someone who eventually goes up into the rafters. So I think he deserves to be talked about amongst the all-time greats.
All right. Final question on basketball before we move on to volleyball. A scale of 1 to 10, how big would your meltdown be if Marquise got in the rafters before Poland?
Oh, no, it wouldn't, because here's the thing with Jacob Poland. I love Jacob Poland. He's he's one of my all-time favorites because he came around at that perfect time for me, because he was the player who was around, as I was in high school, and then his senior year was my first year. So Jacob Poland was larger than life, all-time leading scorer. He was there for every single massive moment sans one of my entire K-State basketball fandom, as a child to now, just absolute massive moments. But Jacob Poland has had the opportunity. If Jacob Poland wanted to make things work, he would already be up in the rafters. He's still chasing a pro career. I think he is very adamant that when he goes up in the rafters, he wants Frank Martin to be there. He wants some of his teammates to be there. I think in his perfect world, Matt Figger and Brad Underwood and Scott Greenwald, all those coaches and support staff would be there as well. And I think, and I don't want this, I think he wants to go up at the same time as Michael Beasley. I want them both to have their own separate night. I know Michael Beasley's a controversial one when they talk about rafters, one and done. But I'd put Keontae up there as well. But that might be a conversation for another podcast that you guys bring me on 3 years from now. But I would not melt down at all. I would kind of roll my eyes and be like, all right, come on now. It's probably a little early for Marquise Noel to be going up, because I think Jacob Poland will be up in the next 3-4 years. But it's in Jacob Poland's court. Yeah. I know for a fact that if he said, hey, I'm ready, I'll be back for this game, they would have the banner ordered, it would go up, and it's really in his court. So that's why I wouldn't melt down that hard.
The K-State Family Facebook page meltdown would be an all-timer, though, with Marquise going up before Jacob Poland. I think
it would be pretty big on Twitter as well. But
I think it would.
I wouldn't go on Foundation for like 2 weeks.
No, I think there's enough people who pay intimately enough attention that would point out that, like, hey, Jake has his demands, and Jake's come on my show. It was our all-time biggest downloaded show of all time. And I think that's because people thought he was going to on Bruce Weber. Sorry for saying a cuss word, but he didn't. But I talked to him, and he has his demand. He's like, there are so many people who are part of my time at K-State. They all need to be back. So when they can make that happen, and when Jake says, hey, yeah, let's do this, it'll happen. But there's a lot of people who need to be up in the rafters. Shout out F.I. Reynolds, the first ever first-team All-American.
Hey, Scott, I brought this up on the Roundtable episode, but did you know that K-State had a basketball player named Ed Head?
Yes. Yeah. I'm ashamed of how much I've flipped through old media guides and saw his name come across.
Just out of curiosity, this is totally random, but where's a good place to get those old media guides? Because I'm a media guide enjoyer as well.
So a lot of them are digital on K-State's website. You can find old ones. And then even if you just Google 2003, 2004 K-State men's basketball media guide, I don't know if that old is there, but it's there. It shows up. And I always pay the extra 10 or $15 to get the media guide with my season tickets. So there you go.
Yeah, that's the move.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, baby.
All right. The last sport that we'll talk about, because women's basketball will be its own episode much later down the line. Yes, I'm going to be very annoying, but you mind? But I'm not even sure if they picked that up, but sometimes a motorcyclist decides to drive by my house. But it is the Volleycats, who last year had a start that was kind of okay. And then we got a really, really good home field advantage and somehow worked ourselves from an okay start to being genuinely upset that we didn't make the NCAA tournament in volleyball, because we probably deserved to. So, and a lot of that core is returning from last year. People like Izzy Shulshevsky, Aaliyah Carter, and Anaya Clinton being big examples. So same question as with the other two sports, sort of where are your expectations at? Because Connor and I have really, really high expectations for Mansfield, the Volleycats.
Yeah, I would love to say compete for the Big 12 championship. But again, BYU is going to be pretty good. I don't know enough about Arizona or Utah to say if they're going to be contenders or not. So I'd love to say that. But really for me, it's get to the NCAA tournament. Would love to win a game in the NCAA tournament. I'd love to sit here and say host the NCAA tournament. But I'm not going to get there. For me, I will never I have a hard time outside of, what we're seeing in women's basketball, ever sitting here and saying my expectation for one of the non-revenues is to compete for a Big 12 championship or to host postseason. Because when you look at K-State's budget, when you look at some of the intrinsic disadvantages K-State has for some of the non-revenue, it makes it tough to have that high of expectations. But I think this team 100% should be in the NCAA tournament. I think it was a shame they weren't. I understand why. I think they got swept by KU late. They had some very bad losses in the non-conference. But they had some of the most impressive wins, if not the most impressive wins in all of college volleyball. They're bringing back an All-American candidate in Aaliyah Carter. They're bringing in one of the best players from Pepperdine, Meg Brown, 3-time first-team All-Conference for Pepperdine. That's, a pretty good volleyball school. I don't know who's going to play libero because Mackenzie's gone. So that's really the only spot I'm a little worried about, because she was a multi-time defensive player of the week in the Big 12. But I assume Mansfield has someone who can slot in there. And, the non-conference schedule looks like it's trying to, set them up to take care of business, a couple marquee opportunities, and then, hey, let's make some noise in the Big 12. So if they're not in the NCAA tournament, I'm going to be upset. But if they're going on the road in the NCAA tournament, I have a hard time setting the bar that high and saying, hey, nope, they failed to meet my expectations. Get to the NCAA tournament, make some noise. If they were to somehow win the Big 12, I would be over the moon. I think volleyball is one of, if not the most fun sports to watch. It is high-paced. Again, this is not shade at any other female athlete at K-State or across NCAA sports. I think the volleyball girls are the most athletic women in college athletics. And I phrase it like that because I don't watch men's volleyball. I'm sure that's insane as well. But volleyball athletes are just insane. It's so fun to watch. And K-State has a little bit of volleyball culture. When I was a student, I was going to Ahern. I was in the Purple Pit. It has great atmosphere. And if they have a team that is worth supporting, and that's a mean way to phrase it, because everyone deserves support when they're representing K-State, a university we all love. But if it's a team that's garnering of attention, if it can really spark the imagination of K-State fans, that place is going to be one of the toughest places to play volleyball in the world. So I see no reason why you can't set it almost year in, year out, saying, hey, compete or get into the NCAA tournament. 2025 might be rough because you are going to lose a lot of high quality players, but Mansfield has connections up and down the West Coast. He's recruiting relatively well based on the people who cover that stuff. I'm not going to say that I'm scouting, AAU volleyball tournaments because I'm not. I can't tell you a single thing, but people who pay attention to that tell me that he is recruiting well. So I have no reason to believe that they shouldn't be a contending team for the NCAA tournament year in, year out. And I'll tell you this, Brian Smoller thinks that Mansfield will win a Big 12 championship at K-State. I don't know if he had predicted it's going to happen this year, but he is over the moon with his expectations for Mansfield, which says a lot because he was so close with Susie Fritz. And I think it says a lot about, Mansfield being able to step into, it was a job. And we all know this, Susie Fritz meant a lot to K-State volleyball. And there are some folks who still were not very happy with that. And he was able to have that sort of season while not having full buy-in from some very passionate volleyball fans in K-State world. Once he gets them to buy in, I think this can be every 2 out of 4 years NCAA tournament program, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5. I think that's where he can get them. That was way longer of an answer than you guys wanted, but I like to talk. What can I say?
No, not at all. That was exactly what I was hoping for. But another question, I guess, on that. Have you been to any games there at the Morgan Family Arena yet?
No, and it sucks because, again, because once we get to August and September, I'm doing one episode every single day, and being 2 hours away, it makes it tough. And then some of those weekend matches, that go hand in hand with a football weekend. I'm going to those games usually with my dad. So then we're going back to Topeka. So it's been tough. I am going to get to a game this year. 100% I will. But I watched almost every single home volleyball game. I watched a lot of the away ones. The Morgue, which I think I was the first one to call it that, even though officially they don't like calling it that because they're like, oh, no, M-O-R-G. It's just short for the Morgan Family Volleyball Arena. It's obviously never going to be dead in there. Whenever I tweet it, I say M-O-R-G. So again, spelt differently, but it's electric. And again, you have K-State students who, again, this is the thing with K-State students, and this is not a shot at them at all. This is actually complimentary, especially if they're winning, especially if you're giving them a fun environment. They are going to be the loudest students for any given sport. Again, if K-State volleyball is bad, 3-4 years down the line, that arena will be empty. Fans make the home court advantage in volleyball more than anything. In Bramlage, it didn't help, but some of those big games in Bramlage, and again, when they got to the NCAA tournament, second from last year for Susie Fritz, they put, a few thousand in there. The students are going to go crazy. When K-State baseball has expectations, they're selling it out. Students are going there. It's going to be wild. K-State soccer, they're not good. But early on, when there was excitement for the program, they were selling out games. They had, 600 students there. The first game of the year for soccer, they're going to have 600-700 students there. We all know how great football and basketball can be with the students when the team is good. That place, if they're good, not only the students, but the townies, people coming from in and out. There's a culture with volleyball. that to Susie Fritz's, credit, she was a big part of almost the entire history of success with the sport. But K-State fans want to support volleyball. So if they stay good, if they stay competitive, that arena will forever be the most hostile arena in, allegedly, outside of some stuff that happens at BYU, one of the most hostile places in college volleyball. I think that was actually proven untrue, but Google it. I'm not going to talk about it.
I was able to go to a few games this last year, and the difference from like the earlier games that I went to like a couple of later on games I went to was really noticeable once people really started to buy in. Like, I mean, it is an absolutely electric environment. Like, they did a fantastic job. Yeah, the outside of the building looks like an ugly barn, but the inside is incredible. The lighting and sound and everything, the fan experience is genuinely fantastic. So like, I really hope you had the chance to go, because it was super fun. But on the team, yeah, they brought in some really good transfers, like Meg Brown from Pepperdine. Jordan Williams, I think, was a former like top like 10 recruit from Kentucky. Then there's one other, I can't remember her name, but she played down at LSU. She's originally from Derby, I think. And I think she's in her last year. But yeah, this is a super, super, super high potential team. And I'm really, really excited for them. I mean, this is going to be a pretty big year for, if things go according to plan, for a lot of the non-revenue sports. Women's basketball should be big. Volleyball. I really like Mansfield as well. I mean, his resume speaks for itself. And the team by the end of the year was like, they could beat anybody in the country last year if they played them at home. So I'm really interested to see how this team does.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through their social media page, and some of the highlights that they like, just like Liz Grogeski, like she doesn't get talked about, but she's one of the faces of the team, and she's so athletic. And again, you talk about Izzy. I mean, I think she's 5'7" or 5'8", and she's going up there and blocking some of the best hitters in the Big 12. Like, this team is so fun to watch. And again, if you don't like volleyball, like, look, you're not going to all of a sudden like the sport. But I went to Washburn Rule. They won state all 4 years when I was there. I like to think I appreciate the game, and they are an electric group. And I would tell folks, if you've ever enjoyed watching volleyball, make sure you have ESPN Plus. And it's something I was saying about the women's team. And again, I don't think they're going to achieve at that high level, hosting postseason or anything like that, although they could. They are worth your time investment. They are worth making an effort in watching, because if you watch them and you don't come away entertained and checking your phone being like, all right, when's the next time they're on TV? When's the next time they're on ESPN Plus? Then maybe you just don't like volleyball, but they're electric.
Yeah, that's probably the best word that I could describe it. And if they do end up hosting, like that in and of itself they're making it out of the hosting rounds. Like, that's just what happens. And again,
they were so good at home last year. And look, again, you lost some pieces. I'm not going to sit here and say that they didn't lose anyone, because again, I was a big Mackenzie Morris fan. I really liked what she provided on the back line, being able to dig stuff and start the offense. But they're bringing back their weapons on offense. They added big time pieces, so maybe they're able to rotate a little bit more. Or if you have a game where Leah Carter jams up her thumb, or someone's shoulders feeling a little wonky, you feel like, okay, you're not going to have a massive hole in your six when you're out there. So I think this team, similar to women's basketball, they're able to go into the portal and say, hey, we don't have a lot of starting pieces that we need to fill, but we're adding some experience. We're adding some pedigree that's going to allow us to go a little bit deeper. And, I think Mansfield, I think he's the real deal. I don't know if he's going to be a lifer, because I think volleyball, more than some of these other sports, that if you're highly successful at K-State, you might be looking for your way out. But I think Mansfield's going to go down as another great Gene Taylor hire.
Yeah, I agree. The last thing that that I'll really say about it is the morgue is infinitely better than any other nickname that a K-State field has. And I still absolutely refuse to call Toynton Family Stadium the Toint. And I think anyone who does should be subject to corporal punishment. Also, on the women's basketball front, I still have to be waterboarded because they didn't make the second weekend. And yes, I'm still sad about it.
That, oh my gosh. That was depressing. I mean, because, God, that just makes me sad. I wish you wouldn't have brought that up. Let's just move on, please.
Yeah, okay.
Because now all I'm thinking about is Gabby Gregory getting subbed out and crying, and that makes me want to cry. Here's a question for you guys. Again, your podcast, and here I am asking you guys a question. Has anyone in your time, being a K-State fan, which for Ace is like 2 months, and Connor, a lot longer, but Gabby Gregory, I think the only person who rivals her is Marquise Noel in ingratiating themselves to K-State fans at more than just a surface level, because, she has, the virability of the Gap Goat, how active she was on social media, how she's now graduated and sticking around. I don't know how, she was going on catbacker stuff after she already graduated. I don't think anyone's ingratiated themselves in such a short time as a transplant like Gabby Gregory. And I think Marquise Noel is literally the only possible comp for someone who came in as a transfer and ingratiated themselves and cemented themselves in K-State lore forever, like Gabby Gregory did.
I think it's Gabby. Honestly, I don't even think it's close with Marquise. Because Marquise obviously did ingratiate himself, but it was mostly through on the court performance, but he still loved K-State and he still made that known. But Gabby just took it to a whole different level. And again, that's not shade at Marquise. That's like Gabby went really out of her way to show how much appreciation she had for K-State and the fan base at large. The Gapco thing was like huge. Like my girlfriend has a Gapco, my mom has a Gapco. That brought people in to women's basketball that maybe wouldn't have been paying as much attention otherwise. She deserves so much better than how the season ended. But she is kind of like one of those all-time EMA student athletes, regardless of whether they started here or not.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is in reverse, because I think Will is probably going to be super emo the rest of his life. I think he just his
you could not be more wrong about that, dude.
Oh,
I think Will Howard is going to. I think he is going to. Oh man, so and again, it's not necessarily his fault, but some of the stuff his high school coach said to media, and he's continuing to say on Twitter. I think there's a real chance that by December, you two are the only Will Howard fans left. I think things are going to get ugly. I think so. I hope it doesn't. But some of the stuff that is coming out of Will Howard's camp about K-State, I'm just glad his brother's at K-State because I think he could be good. I think Ryan Howard could be good. But man, I think you're wrong, Ace. I really wish. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're making fun of me. I hope there's a picture of him wearing a K-State undershirt, that gets clipped after he beats Michigan or something like that. But I think you're going to be wrong. And I'm not happy that I'm saying that.
I'm not particularly happy about it either. As the member 1 or 1A, 1B of the Will Howard at K-State fan club. But yeah, we do not have time to talk about women's basketball because I'd be talking about that for 40 minutes.
That's fine. And honestly, whenever you guys do your women's basketball show, it should just be you two because you guys do carry the banner harder than anyone when it comes to women's basketball. So you guys need to do that show yourself. You should not have a guest on for that. It should be you guys.
Unless the guest is Gabby Gregory.
Yeah, and I bet she'd come on. Maybe. I don't know. Here I am signing her up for something. I don't know. She'd come on. But yeah, she should. She should.
I placed the bet on a baseball player coming onto the show before a basketball player?
I don't know. She's super online. So if all your guys' listeners were to happen to tweet at her and say, hey, Gabby Gregory, you should go on with the Aggieville Alleycats, she'll see the tweets.
That is kind of
Saying.
That is facts. She released her favorite burners. We weren't on it because technically we're not a burner.
Well, you guys should. Your guys' memes are awesome. I don't get the Gen Z distorted picture memes, but I think they're hilarious. I don't get it, but they're always funny.
There's nothing to get. It's just the distortion.
Okay, well, I mean, it's hilarious. I feel like there's a joke I'm not in on, but that's okay. But I love it. I'm pumped.
I wish there was a joke that you weren't in on, but there really isn't. Like when you look at it and you're like, that's when you look at it and your knee-jerk reaction is that's stupid. That's really you've really reached, I think, the depths of the meme.
Like back when you guys would drop the Style Boys, RIP, because none of them are even with the team anymore. They all have a
part two, though.
What?
We got part 2.
Yeah, well,
with Avery.
The funny thing is I don't, again, people disagree with me. I don't even think Avery and Lincoln Cure are going to play that much together.
No.
Like, I think because Lincoln's going to be playing basketball and running track his senior year. He's not going to show up till June. He's never been a football-only guy. It's going to take him a while. We have some good tight ends. But, again, you will get to drop that on people's heads. And I think it's hilarious. And I think, again, I hate giving him so much credit for this, but I think it was Zach. I think it was K-State man who was like, man, if you people don't think that Michael Beasley and Bill Walker would have been cranking that Soldier Boy on Twitter, then I think he said like Ernie Barrett doing the twist on Twitter.
That was definitely K-State.
You guys are crazy, which is true. And then again, every single fan base who tries to dunk on K-State players for having fun on TikTok. Like, oh, guess what? It takes 2 seconds to find your own players doing that. I'm sorry, K-State's gargantuan, and every time our players do something, it goes viral. So
it's a real shame, isn't it?
It really is. It's a burden.
Last question before you get to plug anything you want. What is your favorite Alleycat meme? Because mine will always be Pelicopter.
So I do love the Style Boys. Because I think that was the first one that I saw. I like the He's Coming. That one's great. What was it like? Pip, you just lost to the English.
Yeah, Pip, you just lost to the English.
That one was good. You guys had some great ones for baseball this year. I'm trying to think. Those are the ones I feel like I see because I think you guys spurred on an entire subculture of those memes.
We did. I'm so proud of it.
Or maybe it's just Gen Z and I'm trying to give you guys too much credit, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I see so many of them for football that I'm like, okay, is that an Aggieville Alleycat one or not? But I think the Pip you just lost to the English and the He's Coming because again, that that worked itself into the lexicon of the baseball team. Like they were tweeting that when he was coming in later on in the season. So I think those two probably are up there. And then the Style Boys, because I think that's the first one I remember seeing. So
that's actually Ozzy's first.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess I'm going to have to shout out Ozzy, even though he talk about people who hate me. But you got to give credit where credit's due. So the fact that Ozzy created that, I'll give him his due. So I guess technically it is Pip, you lost to the English, and He's Coming. So I guess for the Aggieville Alleycat originals, those are my two favorites.
To be fair with you on Ozzy hating you, based on his Twitter feed, there's not much he doesn't hate. So I don't think that you're alone.
Look,
we were on the list of things he doesn't hate. We might not be anymore.
No. You guys didn't do anything wrong. I'll say this, and this is about my own personal life on the internet. I've tried my best to kind of draw back in my older age. But at the same time, if anyone's listening to this, again, going super long, but if anyone's listening to this, don't take the internet too seriously. Again, I grew up, on Go Email. I was amongst Twitter when it started, and I was old enough, that it didn't ruin my high school life. But don't take anything too serious. Most of it's just memes and just people having fun. Don't be a creep. Don't be a douchebag, but don't take things too seriously. Don't let something someone anonymously says about you get you down. So that's what I'll say about the internet.
Wise words. Wise
Wise
words.
words. But you get to plug everything you want before we get to the outro.
Okay, well, shout out to Manhattan Brewing Company and Charlie Hustle. No free ads, but they do sponsor my show, and they put on great product. Shout out to my dog, Chauncey. He's the best dog in the world. Look, if you're not listening to Bosco's Boys at this point, that's fine. You don't have to. I'm doing it because I enjoy doing it, but I am going in June. We went 3 to 4 episodes a week. July, we're going 4 to 5 episodes a week. Starting in August, we will have Blitz Month where both Ace and Connor will come on. Hopefully they don't start telling me no. But we'll start going 5 episodes a week through the balance of the year. I have a lot of fun. I was lucky enough to start it, when there weren't a lot of K-State fan podcasts. Since I started, I've seen probably, if not a dozen, close to a dozen start and end. You guys have the staying power, and I know you guys are busy going through law school, going through life. Connor has a girlfriend. There's someone who likes Ace's cooking, I guess, allegedly. I don't know. You guys have lives, but you're still making time to put out this content. And I think it is the best content in K-State fan podcasting world. I think anyone who isn't listening to you guys, but they're K-State fans, are doing themselves a disservice. And I'm proud of what you guys have done. I know how tough it is to be consistent. I know how tough it is to do shows when the team isn't winning. I know how tough it is to come up with off-season content, but you guys don't pack it up in the off-season. You guys keep it going. So I just want to applaud you guys. If anyone's still listening, buy shirts, support them if you have the means to do it. It's tough to be a content creator because that's what we are. We're fans doing content, and we wouldn't do it if we're not having fun. But it is tough, and it is a lot of work. So I'm proud of you guys. You guys don't need me to be proud of you, but I remembered you guys starting. I think I've listened to just about every episode, if I haven't listened to every episode, and the growth you guys have had, and the joy that I can hear when you guys are talking to each other and your guests, truly is second to none. Again, I love the Cocaine Willie guys. There's been a lot of fun podcasts that have come and gone, but the staying power and what you guys have been able to create and foster in your own little community, it really is second to none. So I applaud both of you guys, and that's all I got. Keep it going until you're not having fun. But I'm always going to be a listener. So thank you guys for that.
Well,
thank you.
To my podcast, Dad, it does matter to me if you're proud of us or not, because I yearn for the approval of people.
You're already the favorite. Stop.
That is true. Connor is the favorite. But that's okay. It's not like I don't like you, Ace. He's just the favorite.
Yeah, that's fine. He didn't start anything on a trivia episode because someone worded a question poorly. But
I will say again, I don't know who's still going to be listening to this. I was properly called out by MJ, who is a one-time competitor. I incorrectly did word the Kansas native question. So Darren Sproles actually was born in Iowa, played ball in high school ball in Kansas. So that was wrong. So I will own up to that. But Ace, you're still in my top 3 of fellow K-State fan podcasters. And it's really dependent on what Chef says, whether you're 2 or 3. So you're in great company. And if you just take Missouri fan out of your Twitter bio, I'd probably put you at tie for 1 again. But, whatever. You got to stay true to who you are, even if that does, kind of make me love you a little less. So
follow your dreams and always be true to yourself.
Yeah, unless it includes being a Missouri fan. That's done. I'm done. I will not talk. You guys sign off.
All right. One last thing is thank you for the kind words. And the entire time that you were saying that, by the way, I was thinking about like the 4 times that we've been mentioned on the foundation. One was when we had the scoop about Peyton Wilson opting out. And someone said, well, the Alleycats said that he's opting out. The only response in the rest of the thread was, why are you listening to them?
All right, I lied. I'm a liar. I'm going to talk again. They hate me. They hate my podcast. Most of the people on the foundation, that's fine. Do not ever care if someone's not going to put their name on it. You should not listen. You should not give it a second thought. And again, if people are saying that, that's fine. Most of those people are just, trying to, around on message boards. You guys do have a great product, no matter what anyone is going to say. I've seen people say good things about you on message boards, by the way. I just try to hope you guys don't see them, so you still crave my approval.
Validation.
So
working.
No, I'm just kidding.
Working.
Now I'm done talking.
But yeah, I just think it's funny because that's like the immediate response and the end of the thread. Why are you listening to them? We also have our own little mini war going on with them, but Connor, do you have any final words?
No, I don't. Other than I guess an addendum to what Scott said about not taking things that people say seriously is you can just make that a blanket waiver for all of the foundation. I think on not taking anything that's said there seriously, because that place is not good for anybody's mental health, including the people that run it, I think. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
But thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I'm at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
Scott, you get to plug yours as well.
Well, I said I wasn't going to talk. At Scottwildcat. Very basic spelling. My name's Scott McFarland, by the way. I'm not hiding behind, a burner like some folks try to claim. But
my name is just my name twice. But thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Thank you all for listening, and stay safe, Alleycats.